Irving and Curry, one-on-one. Irving puts it up. It's good! Kyrie Irving from downtown!
This moment was 7 years ago. It's been over 2,500 days since one of the greatest shots in NBA history. And since then, things have all gone downhill for Kyrie Irving. He forced his way out of Cleveland, played in just 9 playoff games for the Celtics, said he wanted to stay.
You guys will have me back. I plan on re-signing here next year.
Lied, signed with the Nets, won 1 playoff series there, caused all kinds of drama, and completely sabotages one of the most talented teams in league history. Forced his way out of there and went 8-12 to finish the season in Dallas as the team went from the 5th seed before trading for Kyrie to intentionally tanking their final 2 games to force themselves out of the play-in and into the lottery. Kyrie went from a 23-year-old NBA champion, a hero of a franchise, one of the most beloved players in the league by both fans and players, to a 30-year-old, often injured locker room problem without a team. A guy that, despite his incredible talent, is the only star of his level in the entire league that can't get a full max contract offer from a single team in the NBA. But despite all that, he has the opportunity to completely revive his career right now with what is the biggest decision of the entire offseason. As an unrestricted free agent, Kyrie is going to have plenty of options, the first and most obvious being returning to the Dallas Mavericks, a team that, despite the way their season ended, could very easily talk themselves into continuing the Kyrie Irving experience, partially because they're just that desperate. When they made the Kyrie trade in the first place, there was a whiff of desperation to it. They wanted to add a star player alongside Luka, and even though things completely fell apart for them, there's still a blueprint with some other additions where Kyrie could be a very big positive for them. As great as Luka is, having another perimeter scorer on the level of Kyrie is at times going to make his life easier, as well as, in theory, helping the team when Luka is off the floor, as well as when Luka wants to rest some games. The problem with this for Dallas is the defensive issues that occurred once Kyrie got there, and the reason that the Mavs have been successful at times when Luka's been there is because of Luka's individual brilliance, as well as being a very good defensive team, specifically since Jason Kidd has been there. The whole reason, one of the reasons they made the conference finals in the first place was because they were a great defensive team with one great offensive star, that being Luka, and having 2 players out there that can't or won't guard in Kyrie and Luka is going to be really tough to build that defensive identity around. You also might be wondering, why in the world would Kyrie want to return to Dallas? He's never been a guy that shows much loyalty to an individual franchise. He certainly doesn't seem to show or hold any loyalty towards returning to the Mavericks. Well, they might just be the only team in the league desperate enough to actually offer Kyrie the one thing that caused him to force his way out of Brooklyn, and that is a full 4-year max contract. One of the main reasons that there were issues between Kyrie and the Nets is that they were unwilling to give him a full 4-year max because of all the issues that he caused. And as a result, Kyrie wanted out, wanted to put himself in a new situation. And given the desperation in Dallas, the fact that they really don't have many options to add talent to their team, they might be willing to secure Kyrie by just giving him as much money on as many years as they possibly can. But that, of course, is not Kyrie's only option. The LA Lakers are always looming whenever Kyrie is involved. And of course, the LeBron rumors are always going to be there, whether it be last offseason when it was reported that the Lakers were willing to give up 1 but not 2 first-round picks to acquire Kyrie, or in the middle of the year when Kyrie requested out of Brooklyn, the Lakers put an offer in for him as well. However, they found themselves some nice little success without Kyrie, and again, just like with Dallas, it's built around this defensive identity. And no matter what you do, when you bring in Kyrie, despite the greatness of Anthony Davis, some of the other defensive players they have on the roster, Kyrie and LeBron together, LeBron at this stage of his career, those guys aren't going to guard very much, and they're not going to guard very well. And that's going to continue to be an issue here for Kyrie no matter what team he goes to. Not to mention the fact that from a free agency perspective, the Lakers don't have the cap space to just outright sign him. And so this would have to be some kind of complicated sign and trade situation in which Dallas gets back like D'Angelo Russell or something, who's got his own contract stuff to figure out. And overall, this feels too complicated, and the Lakers are having too much success to introduce Kyrie into this equation. But just like with LeBron, there's one other guy that Kyrie always seems to have a connection with, and that is, of course, Kevin Durant, who now finds himself in Phoenix. And that could be another spot where there's a possible sign and trade involved. It's not as clean with Phoenix because they have no other assets to trade, whereas the Lakers do have some picks they could trade, as well as maybe a young player or 2 that could interest Dallas. This would basically have to be Chris Paul and something else in exchange for Kyrie Irving, specifically with the intention of getting Kyrie and KD back together, which again feels unlikely, and the only real connection here is to KD himself. Some other options here include a team like Miami, again, it would have to be a sign and trade. They don't have the cap space to sign Kyrie, and they certainly need the offense. This is one of the worst late game offenses in the entire league, and they certainly need a guy that can create shots the way that Kyrie does, but he doesn't really strike me as like a Heat culture kind of guy. Then maybe you could throw around a team like Atlanta if they want to trade away Trae Young for Kyrie and some assets. Maybe like that's kind of the point that we're at here with Kyrie is it's really difficult to find him a team. One, because he's burned a couple of bridges, and two, having a smaller guard that can't really defend, that's a great perimeter player, it's not that difficult to find. There's not that many teams that are really that desperate to find someone like Kyrie, even without the other baggage that he brings to the table. But that doesn't mean it's not an incredibly interesting situation because Kyrie is one of the most talented players in the entire league when he plays. And if you add him, it is absolutely an upgrade in terms of talent. You could be lifting your team up to heights that they would not have been able to reach without bringing in Kyrie. And when it comes to players that have that much value, normally it's not this easy to acquire them. It's one of the main reasons that Dallas went out and got him in the first place. But also, as Dallas can attest to, anytime you're bringing in Kyrie, you're inviting the possibility of drama and headlines and uncertainty, whether it be injuries, whether it be an unavailability to play, which again, just adds to the intrigue. Which brings me back to something I talked about in the beginning of the video, and that is a sense of desperation. That is going to be the thing that is going to force a team to talk themselves into bringing in Kyrie. And make no mistake about it, someone is going to make a big move, or they're going to sign Kyrie to a big contract. They're going to talk themselves into it specifically because of how unbelievably talented he is. And yes, he's had a big drop off for the last 7 years, ever since he hit that shot in the 2016 finals. But you still are trying to always find players like this in terms of their basketball ability, even if Kyrie does bring a lot of other stuff with him. And the weirdest part of all of this is the most likely scenario is probably that he's just going to end up back in Dallas, a team that already has had a bad experience with Kyrie in terms of the way that the team played when he was there. The vibes were a little bit weird, certainly towards the end. It definitely was not what he expected when he arrived in Dallas. But what I keep coming back to is a lack of other destinations, considering the sign and trade possibilities there, as well as no other team in the league being quite as desperate as Dallas is. If there's a scenario out there where Kyrie leaves for nothing in free agency, he just goes into a team's cap space and you don't get anything in return for him in a sign and trade, this is a disaster situation for Dallas. Luka's looking around wondering where their best perimeter defender went, and Dorian Finney-Smith. They traded him away in the Kyrie deal. I don't really think he cares too much about Spencer Dinwiddie, but you have that future draft pick that's gone as well. Luka's looking around wondering what happened to Jalen Brunson, what happened to this team that we had that made the conference finals. Things are suddenly falling apart in Dallas, and because you owe that 2029 future pick to the Nets, you don't have any other assets to continue to build around Luka in the future. And there's just no upside here. And what that makes me think is that Dallas is going to run this back. Even though it didn't go well with Kyrie, even with the defensive issues, they don't really have a choice. This is a corner that they have backed themselves into when they made the Kyrie trade in the first place. The thought process was maybe it raises your ceiling for a playoff push, and if it doesn't, you can sign and trade him or extend him in the offseason. But the problem that they didn't anticipate is there are no more suitors for Kyrie Irving, and certainly not ones that are as desperate as Dallas is to pay him this big contract. And if you're Kyrie, the thing you've been searching for ever since you got to Brooklyn is that next contract, that last big deal. You're 30 years old. He wanted the 4-year max from Brooklyn. They wouldn't give it to him. And if Dallas does, I think he's staying a Maverick.